Hey guys, it's Kevin Ashmore for Humans, Season 1, Episode 5, and holy shit, what an incredible episode. I mean, last week's episode really set up some great cliffhangers, but this was really like the payoff that we needed and the aftermath of what happened. I mean, this is the episode of Humans where shit hits the fan, and I love it. By far the best episode of the season. I mean, such an incredible episode. So much payoff in this episode that I've been waiting for all season, and I loved every minute of it. Let's just get into it. Such a great episode, and I cannot wait for these last 3 episodes. They're going to be amazing, and I'm just loving this show. So we start with Niska. Right away, we get this awesome scene that I absolutely love. Niska's running through the woods. She goes to a freeway underpass and meets Leo and Max, and she asks what they saw, and Leo says that he saw a tree that felt like life, and he says that their father hid the formula for gene consciousness within them. And Niska says if they can make more, the humans will have to create them. Basically, they can overthrow the humans. So now we know what their plans. They basically want to make more of them and basically take over for the humans, which I can understand. I mean, to them, the humans are they're not very, you know, they aren't very, they don't treat them nicely. They treat them like animals, and they're tired of it. So I can understand why they want to just overthrow the humans and make more of them, and I think that definitely is very interesting. So Leo says Niska has to lay low since she's wanted for murder, which, yeah, that probably is the best thing for Niska to do. Knowing Niska, though, I knew she wasn't going to do that, because Niska is, like, in badass mode right now. There was no way she was going to do that. And says people know her face. He gives her an address where she'll be safe, and she's upset it's with a human, because she wants nothing to do with humans right now. She wants to be with her brothers, and, she wants to be with her brothers and doesn't want to be with humans because she's just tired of them. After what she experienced last week, how can you not be tired of humans? Seriously, how can you not? And Leo says this human will keep her safe and counsels her to be nice, and Niska insists that she is nice, and I thought that was pretty funny because he said that, and basically that's where we start with that. So Maddie then asks Anita a very important question. Now, what I was thinking is that Anita is going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. But that's not what she says. She asks if the name Mia means anything to her, and all Anita says is no. Now, I'm still kind of thinking that, like, she didn't say, oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. My theory of her, of being Mia and not actually being Anita is gone now, because we realized in this episode that that's not true, although I still kind of do think that she still does have some memory, and I think definitely that's what's going on here, that she sort of vaguely remembers things, but not really. So she and Toby watch the news about the synth attacking humans, and Maddie says no synth would do that deliberately. And obviously, we know they're talking about Niska, and Maddie's right. I mean, Niska only did that because she saw what was happening, and she didn't like what she was seeing. I mean, that would be like if the human population were to be, like, destroyed. I mean, it's just as bad, and I like seeing, that's one of the things I love about the show, is just seeing how these synths, they have feelings, and they care about what's going on within the world, and how they're being treated. That's something I think is fantastic in the show. So Joe tells the kids that they decided to check up on Anita, and they found out that she's really old and probably illegally modified, and Laura says that explains a lot. Joe says that they have to take her back, but Sophie's pissed. I mean, she does not want to get rid of Anita at all. She says you can't get rid of someone who's old, and Toby says Anita saved his life and they want to chuck her away. Now, we know why Joe wants her over. That way Laura doesn't find out that he had sex with Anita, and she doesn't find the thing about the 18 plus. And obviously, that's most likely why Joe wants to get rid of her. So, and plus, it'd probably save both of them. But basically, I like Toby's point that basically Anita saves him. Why are they getting rid of her? There's no point to. I mean, Anita, she's not Odie. Like, Odie, that's someone who needs to be thrown away. Anita's perfectly fine. I mean, she does what a synth should do. And Maddie also wants to keep her so she can find out what she is. And Joe's aggravated. He wants rid of her, obviously, since he slept with her. And Pete comes into Karen's room, and she has to pretend she was sleeping, because obviously now we know that she is a synth, and that she doesn't want to tell him that. And her charging cord is on the floor, but he didn't see it, and he shows her she was like this close to him finding out, and he's gonna find out at some point. I mean, literally this close. And he shows her the newspaper headline about the synth attack at the brothel, and Pete and Karen come into work amid a huge media mess, and the boss says to refuse all the killer synth claims. He thinks there was a leak, but it was Pete, and he says if this dolly hurts anyone else, he'll replace Pete and Karen with synths at the fraction of the cost. And I mean, at this point, they could do that. It really goes back to Maddie's statement in episode 1 that whatever jobs there are, a synth would be better than a human. That honestly is true. Unless you talk about, like, Leo, Niska, who actually have personalities and act like humans. They're, like, advanced. And Karen asks about the 999 call about the Smash Club, and he says it's a time waster and to drop it. And Karen doesn't. She calls someone about the 999 call and asks to hear about it, even though the operator was told to drop it. So she goes online and finds some info about the Smash Club video, but sees that all the videos have been removed. And Niska notices that she's probably because they probably got rid of all the videos, so that way they didn't have any evidence for what happened. So Niska notices that she's bleeding blue blood and asks the cab driver to stop. She goes to George's house, and I knew that Leo was talking about George. Like, when he said, "It's a human that's going to protect you," knew he was talking about George. And tells him that Leo sent her, and George asks why. She says Leo told her she'd be safe there. She goes to walk away when George lets her in. He offers her, and obviously she's kind of hesitant about entering because of, her experience with humans in the last episode. She just doesn't really know if she should trust him or not. So I like that she was kind of hesitant about this. So basically, he offers her a cup of tea, then calls for Vera. He tells her to come in. Vera says she's a synth and says there's no cardiac signature about her. Vera asks Niska why she doesn't share, and Niska calls Vera a dolly and insists that she's not a synth herself. And that, I think, is definitely very interesting, because now we're getting these things called dollies, which dollies, I'm assuming, is like Anita, Vera, Odie, the ones that talk like robots. But people like Niska, Fred, and Leo, they are advanced synths. They're not just, and Leo's a hybrid. I mean, he's more than just, he's like half human, half robot. We know this. And for all we know, Niska could be that too. So could Fred, so could, Max, all of them. And basically, she says David Elser made her, and George asks if she's conscious. He's intrigued, and basically, he wants to know what's going on with her, and this, I think, is definitely very interesting. So, Leo and Max look for leads on Mia. Obviously, their main mission now is to find Mia and track her down, because now that they found Niska, all they need to do is find Mia and Fred, and then they can make more of them. So Max mentions needing photos of Leo for when he dies again, and Maddie sends Leo a message about Mia via headcrack. And Joe tries to convince Laura to get rid of Anita, and Leo calls Maddie and she says she found out something about Mia, and he asks to meet her again and calls him weird. He says he's really not, and obviously Maddie she's not really sure if she should meet up with him. And Joe asks Laura who Tom is, and she says she doesn't know what he's talking about, what it has to do with Anita. And I like that he asked her that, because obviously that's on his mind right now. It's kind of like that thing where she cheated on him, so he cheated on her. And again, I'm not saying two wrongs make a right, but in his mind, that's kind of what he's thinking. So Maddie says it's not a good time, and Leo says to please meet, and he'll send her the location. A man then shows up to collect Anita for the synth return, and you think that that's going to happen, but Maddie, being the badass that she is, I mean, Maddie in this episode is like a full-blown badass. I love it. She pulls Anita out the door with her instead, and Anita tells Maddie that the course of this action is unsafe, and obviously, Anita's programmed to do certain things and say certain things, so she's going to say that. And as Laura and Joe head to the door, Maddie peels out with Anita, and basically, they missed her. So Leo paces and worries, then Maddie shows up with Anita/Mia, and we get the reunion we've wanted. It is an awesome scene. I mean, it's the first time she's been reunited with her brothers, and it's a beautiful scene. Leo hugs her. She gives him the standard synth disclaimer about inappropriate physical contact, and you can tell that definitely she has been programmed a certain way. Now, I'm kind of thinking that if Maddie wasn't in, because I was kind of thinking, what happens if Maddie leaves the room? Is she going to be back to her normal self? I was kind of wondering what was going to happen there, because me personally, I kind of feel like she only acts this way in front of humans. When she's with the synths, she's going to act like her normal self, but we don't get a scene like that, so I'm not really sure if that's true or not. All we know is I'm still trying to make sense of the, I'm here, that thing from episode 3, I'm still trying to understand what that was. So, basically, Maddie says there's something else still in there, and she's seen it, and obviously that's because the I'm here thing. And Leo introduces himself, and Anita tells Maddie this is an inappropriate environment, but Maddie says they're friends and it's a science project, and Max says this isn't Mia, but Leo says she's in there and just needs to be brought to the service, and Maddie tells him about accessing her root system, and Anita screamed and was scared, and she asked what kind of synth Mia was before, and he says a very special one. And obviously, she was just as advanced as Niska, Fred, Leo, or Max, and Joe and Laura, meanwhile, they're panicking. Obviously, I mean, their daughter just left with the synth they wanted to get rid of, and Laura wants to call police since Maddie doesn't know how to drive and it's illegal, but basically Laura says if they hadn't argued, this wouldn't have happened, and he hugs her, and actually, no, it probably still would have happened. If they wouldn't have agreed to get rid of her, then it wouldn't have happened. He hugs her and says, we'll all be fine, and basically Niska tells George to quit staring and says there are no physical differences between her and another synth, and basically they then quote philosophy back and forth, and George asks how Eister did it, and she says 17,000 pages of root code in her mind, and George says why not, and asks her what she's feeling. She says boredom at his questions and anger at people that would destroy them, and he asks what it is to be her, and she says experience is subjective, then asks what it's like to be him, and he says these days not so great, but better a while ago. He asks who wants to destroy them, and she says anyone who knows what they are, and he says David lured him over there from MIT to help design for the first synths. Now, I have heard that David apparently does end up being on the show. I don't know when. I'm assuming probably like next week's episode because we have 3 episodes left, but I heard that the character of David, he is going to make an appearance, and I can't wait to see how that turns out. I'm assuming it's going to be next week's episode. And, he says he has David to stop and think what this meant for humanity. He says David got rid of him after that. He says, now here you are. She says sorry to disappoint. He says he's not disappointed. He calls her mankind's greatest creation, and he says she worries him, but she's an undeniable miracle. And George says that Leo showed him the message he found, and she says it's the key to the future. And he says David made her hard, but she says it was her experience that shaped her, just like his have him. And he asks about her experiences, and she says she needs to charge, and Leo works with and that I thought was definitely very interesting. So Leo works with a direct feed to Anita. They try to crack deeper into her code. He says he can see something else is there, and Maddie says to try a authorization attack, and they make her twitchy, and Leo can't take it. He has Max shut her off. You know, it's kind of like Odie. She keeps saying the same thing over and over again, and Leo has him turn her back on again. She opens her eyes, and Leo asks if it's her. She says unauthorized tamper in progress and just starts babbling incoherently, and Leo gets closer and asks, he says, where are you? And she says she's not entirely sure. She still insists she's Anita and needs to make dinner, and basically Max says it's been more than 2 hours, but Leo wants to try again, and obviously it's not working. They know it's not going to work now, and you can see that Leo really wants to save, you know, Mia, because obviously he had a romantic connection with her. They had something, and it's just really sad to see that work out, and I like how determined Leo is to make this happen. That's something I love about Leo's character. So Peter gets a call about the rental agreement for Simon, and Simon has to be returned by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or his credit card will be charged, and Pete runs into Jill and Simon at a restaurant, and Pete says that people are laughing at her, and Jill says she doesn't care. He says Simon has to go back to the shop unless she can pay it herself, and he's angry and says that she left him, and she says he left her long before that. She says Simon is easier to be with, and she can rely on him completely. She says she needs Simon and says please don't take him away. And she just doesn't want Simon to go away. She wants to keep him. So Karen meets with the Smash Club guy, and who basically says the blonde came in, paid her money. Obviously, he's talking about Niska. She went apeshit on the humans, but didn't touch the dollies, and she asked to see the video. He shows it to her and says it was taken down after he uploaded. She looks at a shot of Niska's face, and Hob was able to record part of the call between Niska and Leo. The others he's with are shocked because they know that David's son supposedly died. You know, they pretty much think that he died, and according to this, he's not dead. So Hob says David created true AI, and its consciousness proliferation, and they talk about having to destroy the one that Hob has so they can't ever put together the pieces of the code. And the others give this order, then walk away from Hob, and Leo looks at Anita sadly. He closes the laptop, giving up, tells Max that Mia's gone, and it's a really sad scene because you can see that he wants to save her, but it's just she's too far gone. You know, they've programmed her, they've brainwashed her, whatever's happened, and he says she's not in there, looks like she's dead, and Maddie says she saw her, but Leo says it was just an echo, and the Anita personality erased Mia, and Maddie says to let her try, but Leo gets angry. He says, go home, take it with you, and he just, I know that there's going to be a way to save her. There has to be, because obviously, I'm not just going to treat that whole, I'm here thing as just something wrong, that's some sort of malfunction. There definitely is something going on there, and that I think is definitely very interesting. So Maddie tells him that Mia is his, but he says not anymore, and Mia tells Maddie that they should go home now, and I was thinking that Maddie was going to let Leo keep Anita and see what happened there, but Maddie tells Leo she's sorry, and Anita follows her out. They come back to the house, and Maddie tells Anita she knows Mia's still in there. She goes and gets the box that Anita came with, looks at the manuals, and that's when I'm like, oh shit, because she's gonna find the 18 plus thing. And Toby comes in, calls her a teenage cliche. He says her parents are still out looking. She calls him a pervert and says he had sex with her. And she's basically assuming that he had sex with Anita. And Maddie blows it, which is understandable. I mean, he clearly has a crush on Anita. It's pretty clear he does. And Maddie blows up at Toby as Laura comes in, and Laura asks if Toby did this. He says, you have to be 18, he couldn't have done it. Laura says maybe it's a mistake, then calls the shop. Toby looks at Anita, she comes in, he lies and says he did it. His mom and sister are disgusted. By the way, guys, the last 20 minutes of this episode, the last, I'd say, maybe 15 to 10 minutes, awesome stuff. Like, this ending was amazing. By far the best ending we've had this show so far. So it looks like Toby knows it, he says that he had nothing to do with it, but he says he did it. And you can tell that he knows that it was Joe. He's trying to cover it up, and basically he just did whatever he could. And I love the way that Toby did that. I mean, I didn't see that happening, but that I thought was definitely very interesting. So Niska looks at the book that Max gave her, and Laura waits for Joe, who finally comes back, and he asks if Maddie's okay. She says Maddie just didn't want them to send Anita back. He asks if she's okay, and she tells him that Toby had sex with Anita, and she says it's in a report they were sent that adult mode was activated, and Laura says Toby said he was sorry and wouldn't do it again. Joe says he is a teenage boy after all, and Laura says she told Toby they'd talk in the morning. Joe says he'd handle it, and you can tell that Joe knows that he's trying to cover things up. So a guy out for a job spots Odie in the woods. He's lying there bleeding blue goo. The guy runs off. He calls into 999 to report it. Pete's on the phone with the guy, and he gives him the serial number. And he sees that it's Odie. A synth cop offers to send someone to pick it up. And Pete tells the synth to piss off. Pete heads to meet the jogger. And they see that Odie's gone. So where Odie went, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure they're going to throw him out. Because obviously George kept him in the woods, and I don't think Odie's going to leave, but someone's going to end up throwing him out, and that's not going to end up well for George, so we'll have to see what happens with that, but that definitely was very interesting. So, Leo wakes from a vivid dream about his synth family and Mia. It's a very sad scene, because you know this is what his life used to be, and it's not what his life is now, and Leo goes to leave and tells Max he's going alone. He says Mia's dead, Fred's gone, he says Niska's right, and says they'd be better off without him, and Max says he always protected them, but Leo says he's failed. He gets angry. Max tells him to leave him alone, and he wants nothing to do with him. He's pissed off because it's just not working. Whatever they're trying to do, it's not working at all. And Hobbs trying to figure out who the five are, and he knows about Leo, Niska, and Fred, and Fiona tells Hob they're ready to begin. He whispers to Fred that he's sorry. They're ready to destroy him, and basically they're planning on destroying Fred, and I hope that doesn't happen. So Toby works on his bike as his dad comes out the next morning. Joe says Laura told him he slept with Anita, and Toby says he lied, and Joe asks why, and Toby says, you tell me. And I love this scene because you can tell that Toby just wants his dad to come forward about it, and says he knew it was Joe, but couldn't let his mom work out the truth. He says they've always argued, but it's even worse now with her always being gone for work, and now his dad does this. He tells Joe to say something, and Toby says he's his dad and he should say something. He gets angry. Joe doesn't speak, and Toby storms back inside. I mean, he is pissed at his dad, which is understandable. I mean, he should at least come forward and tell Laura what he did. And I mean, I didn't think he was going to, but then I thought, wait a second, the show has literally 3 episodes left, so he only has this episode to tell her because we have 3 episodes left. So George checks on Niska the next day and then helps her go through a healing regimen for some of her injuries. And George then asks if David made her feel pain, and she says pain and pleasure are part of true consciousness. And if you remember, Anita can't feel pain. So if she can feel pain, then there's definitely something different with her. And he asks about death, and she says she doesn't fear it, which makes her stronger than humans. And George says if you're not worried about dying, you're not really living. And that's true. I mean, everyone should always think about dying. You know, he says that she's just existing. And Niska asks if he told someone she was there, and he says no. Pete rings the doorbell, asks to come in. Niska goes to hide because she knows that this is the police. And Pete says he knows he didn't recycle Odie, gives him a ticket for 175 pounds. And I'm like, that's a little much. I mean, 175 pounds, that's a little much. And he hears a noise and asks if he's hiding Odie there and says he'll hit him with another fine. And Pete was the one that told George to get rid of Odie all along. So George says his Vera leaks and has a defective charging point. When Pete sees materials, Niska moves around the house evading Pete as he pokes around. George tells him this is crazy. Pete spots a cracked door. Niska's ready with a pair of scissors, and then Vera comes back inside. George introduces him. Pete asks if another synth has been there. She tells him about Odie driving off with George, and oh my god, Vera's such a bitch. Seriously, I mean, she's just a synthetic, has not been seen since, and Pete tells George he must be proud of working with Eister when he turns on the news these days, and George asks why, but he doesn't tell him. He just leaves, and they're gonna go probably throw away Odie. I mean, that's basically what's gonna happen. He's gonna be forced to throw him away, and that's definitely something he doesn't want to do, but he's probably gonna be forced to do that. So, back at the office, Karen asks Pete if he's having a bad day. She says she found something on the synth he's looking for, and she says she thinks the synth is hiding as a human with a different eye color and human clothes, and she says Shaw is funneling everything to the government block, which is true. That is exactly what Niska's doing. Remember, she put the eye contacts in, so she looks like a human, and I like that Karen's starting to get clues, but here's the thing, we know that Karen is a synth, so is Karen just doing this to protect her? Because I kind of feel like if Karen finds her, she's going to try to protect her. Because obviously she's a synth too, and she doesn't want Pete to know that. So the only way that Karen would know is because she's a synth. And that I think is definitely very interesting. So we'll have to see if Karen finds Niska first, what is she going to do? Because I don't feel like she's just going to take her into the authorities. Because obviously she's a synth, she's going to want to protect them. So we'll have to see what happens with that. And why is she a synth? I mean, is she hiding too? Is she actually not Karen? I mean, who is she? That's what I want to know. So she says they have to keep it off the grid so they can beat Shaw to finding her. And George has hand tremors later while he's working at it and is frustrated. He then looks at the newspaper story about the synth killing of the brothel. There's a meeting of anti-synth fanatics, and Pete shows up later. And the leader talks about how dollies are tearing apart society. He says they come between humans in every area of life, sex, child, raising. He says now we can't even trust them not to hurt us. And the group We Are People, you know, that group against the synths, they're chanting in approval, and you know that they're going to go after them. And that's going to be insane to see what ends up happening there. And again, I really feel like Pete is going to join this group because a synth screwed him over. That's why he left the police. And I really feel like if he finds out what happened with Karen, he definitely is going to leave. Because obviously Karen is a synth. He's going to go after synths. And I really see, not now, but I kind of feel like next season, if there is a season 2, which please give the show a season 2, I swear to God. Next season, I definitely feel like they're setting up Pete as a villain. I can definitely see it happening. I see him as a synth hunter. So later, Laura asks Joe if he talked to Toby, and he says it wasn't Toby, and Laura stops and stares, and I was like, oh shit, he's gonna tell her. And this scene is just incredible. I love this scene, because you don't know what's gonna happen here. You know that he's gonna tell her, but you don't know how she's gonna react. And Joe says he had a few glasses of wine and was mad at her, and basically, I was mad at her that night. He says he just wanted to know what would happen. He says it was an accident, it got away from him. And Joe says he messed around with Anita and says he's sorry and it was stupid. Laura then starts crying, says she knew they were having trouble but didn't have him as a cheat. And Joe says he's not cheating, it's a machine, not a person. And he says he's disgusting, but not another human. And Laura says she lives in their house, looked after their kids, saved their son's life, and he's calling her a sex toy, and she says he's trying to justify it and why he was so keen to get rid of her, and she's realizing that's why he want to get rid of her, and she asks who he is. Joe snaps back, and I love what he asked her. He's like, who the fuck is Tom? Like, I like that he asked her that question, because honestly, she has no right to say this, because obviously there's this Tom guy, and we have no idea who she is. She snaps, she screams him to get out, and it's, again, she's not telling him. So now I really feel this has to be an affair. I mean, this has to be. She would have told him straight out this was not an affair. I mean, I was waiting for her to be like, no, this is not an affair, but she's not telling him it is definitely an affair, and she knows that she's being hypocritical, and that's probably why she just kicked him out. So she kicks him out of the house, and that was insane when we saw that. I didn't expect that to happen at all, but holy shit, I mean, who would have thought that Anita, who is probably the most harmless synth out of any of the synths we've met, did that to them? I mean, that's pretty insane the way that happened, and it's all their fault, though. That's something I like here, is that this is not at all Anita's fault. This is Joe's fault. This is Laura's fault. Joe took advantage of Anita, essentially raped her because she didn't even know what was going to happen. You know, she agreed to it, but basically, you know, she obviously didn't know what was going to happen there, and Laura is with this Tom guy, is probably having an affair with him, and I think this whole thing is just really interesting the way that's all turning out, and that makes sense why I still feel the reason Laura works so late is because she's with Tom. That is how I feel about that, and that's definitely very interesting. So Leo stands alone on a bridge fretting, and Max sits worried, and Niska looks at what George was working on, and obviously Max is all alone now, and Niska looks at what George was working on, then a photo of him with Eister and the others from the group. She points out to George and asks who it is, and he says, Hob! It's Hob! And George says, basically, now we realize why Hob is after them, because Hob and David had a falling out, and Niska says his pulse is raised and pupils dilate and says he's lying. She takes the newspaper from his hand, sees he was reading about the brothel, and the others come to check on Hob, and they see he thoroughly destroyed the synth. Looks like he burned it to a crisp, but he likely burned another and hid Fred away. So, Fred's still there, and this is definitely going to be very interesting to see what's going on with that, and I can't wait to meet David. After that, I really want to meet David's character. I mean, we have to. So, Joe packs a bag, gets into a cab, sees Anita looking out the window, turns away, and he's pissed off what happened, gets in the car, and leaves, and that's how the episode ends. Holy shit, what a huge episode. I mean, guys, the shit at the fan this episode, as I said, I mean, so much happened. Let's just get into it, because there's so much to talk about for next week's episode. I really want to meet David's character now, because obviously something happened between Hob, David, and George that he's just not confessing, and I don't know why George doesn't want to confess this. I mean, he had a synth, he was close to it, he was attached to it, and David, it seems like, kind of had the same thing happen, where he had Leo, who everyone thinks is dead, but he restored him, and that's why Leo's still alive. That's kind of what I think happened, that Leo was killed, but he restored him and turned him into a synth, and that's why he's half human, half synth, and with the rest of them, it's the same way, and somehow, I don't know, maybe if Leo creates synths, then they become more human than others, and I think that definitely is very interesting. So I have to see what happens with that, but I definitely want to meet David's character. After that, we have to meet David's character. Did Laura have an affair with Tom? I am 99% sure that she had an affair with Tom. I mean, 99% sure. There's no evidence that says she doesn't, so I'm just gonna call her out and basically say that she had an affair, and it's still going on. That's really what I think is going on there, and that definitely is gonna be very interesting to see what happens with that. Is the Mia personality still there? I honestly don't know. I think that Mia is sort of still there, but I don't really know. We'll have to see what happens if Mia is still there. I mean, that's something I'm definitely interested in, is seeing what's going on with that. Leo abandoned Max. That definitely is not going to last long. They're going to have to meet up and figure out what's going on, because obviously Niska is going to tell them this information when she gets back, and we'll have to see what ends up happening with that. Pete, as I said, I think he's going to join this We Are People group, because he's getting screwed over by synths, and he's tired of them, and he's going to get rid of Odie, and it's going to be terrible. But what is he going to do when he's obviously going to find out that Karen's a synth, and if Karen finds Niska, what is she going to do? That definitely is something I'm interested in, is seeing what the difference is with Karen, because obviously she's a synth, and there's a reason she's obviously hiding as well, just like Niska is, so we'll have to see what she ends up doing when she finds Niska. That's something I'm very interested in. That's going to be really cool, I think. The whole thing with Mia, I mean, it's very fascinating to me. I think that whole thing is definitely very fascinating. George and Vera, obviously Vera needs to go. I'm sorry, get rid of Vera. I hope they get rid of Vera because she needs to go. She's getting on my nerves. I can't stand her, but that's kind of what her character is supposed to be. Um, is there any okay, obviously Hob was gonna destroy Fred. Are they gonna let him destroy Fred? I'm not really sure. I kind of feel like they're gonna find Fred, but he's gonna end up destroying, I definitely feel a synth is gonna get killed off. I definitely see this happening. I don't know which one, but one of them is gonna die. It's not gonna be Niska. Niska is too much of a badass for that to happen. It's not gonna be Leo. I kind of see Max being the one to die. I definitely see that being a possibility. I mean, Max is separated from the group now. He's not with Leo. Leo's gone off on his own, and we'll have to see what ends up happening. That definitely is going to be very interesting to see where that goes. And I guess that's really my only question. But wow, what an incredible episode. I absolutely loved this episode. Best episode of the season by far. So much I loved about it. And that's basically my review. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I cannot wait for next week's episode. These last 3 episodes are going to be incredible. I'm just loving this show. And this episode took me from really loving this show to absolutely fucking loving this show. And it's one of the best shows on TV. Seriously, it's one of the best shows of the summer. And it's a show that everyone should be watching. I'm surprised that more people aren't watching it after an amazing episode like this. But that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for another classic movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.